Hey up guys, welcome to the Mason in the Dark podcast, where today I'm going to be giving you my review of Season 1 of I Am Not Okay With This. Usually I bring you wrestling in the dark, but the world's crazy, wrestling's not the only thing that I like, and I thought I'd give you something a little bit different. Honestly, I was just going to watch this anyway, and these days most things that I watch I'm just like, okay, how can I work this into doing something for the channel? So I just thought, why not share my thoughts on this? The thing is, these episodes are really short. They're somewhere between 20 minutes and half an hour, and it really shot by. I wasn't expecting the first episode to be over when it was, and I feel like they're a little bit short to just do a video for each. So I thought what I'd do is, I've watched episode 1, I haven't watched anything past that yet, but I'm going to share my thoughts on that. Then I'm going to go and watch episode 2, and we'll just add that to it, and we'll just talk about the whole season in this video. Episode 1 was really good. It centres around Sydney, who's played by Sophie Lillis, and this combines two of my favourite storytelling things. It's a coming of age story, and it's also a super powered self-discovery. To be honest, I'm not a superhero fan, but I'm a superpower fan, if that makes sense. I'm not necessarily into watching something where they're going to go fight crime or try be a hero or anything like that, but at the same time I do like the way that you can use superpowers and how that can affect someone's life and trying to live a life with that. And so Sydney is living with a mum and a brother. She has no dad because dad killed himself, which is rough for her, and now she's being asked to start a diary to write down some of her thoughts in, and that's a helpful device for this episode, or for this season I guess, because it helps the narration, because it's all delivered through what she's writing in a diary. And I thought that's a time-honoured tradition, and they also play it off pretty well. She's got a potential love interest with a boy that lives on the same street just a few doors down, that makes her listen to some music, and seems like something might happen there. He'll probably be the one that ends up learning about the superpowers that are now affecting her. She's having these really weird outbursts. She makes Bully's nose bleed at school. She does something weird to a leaking tap where she makes it pause, and there's another bigger moment towards the end of the episode that I'm not going to spoil because it's actually quite a cool one, where while I wasn't expecting that. This is, I think that this is maybe going to be divisive for some people in terms of the quality, because I think that they're going for a certain style. I'm not sure whether they just had a low budget or whether this was like an intentional choice. There's one point where she's talking to her mother and it almost sounds like it's like a home video type thing, where I think the mum must be in another room, and it sounds like almost like home footage. But I think they might be doing that just to make you identify with the character and see them sort of as real and make it a bit more real. I really like the narration. The character, again, Netflix is really good for audio description, and it's minimal in this, but the character sort of reminds me of another Netflix character, which is the sister from Atypical, and I'm not sure if Sophie Lillis quite pulls that off as much as Casey from Atypical, but at the same time I've only watched the one episode so far, and it really was only 20 minutes, and she's sort of delivering it in a deadpan way, but that again, the voiceover is all just from what she's writing in a diary, so she's not telling the audience or talking to another character or anything like that. So I actually think that the deadpan works. There's things aren't good with the mother. There's a really good scene that was actually quite emotional, where she says something to her mum and she really tentatively broaches the subject of her dad's death, dances around it as much as she can, and she ends up getting shot down with a brutal line, which again I won't spoil because it was just I was not expecting the mother to say what she said. I'm going to sort of leave it at that because I don't want to ramble about them all too much, because I want to sort of talk about the whole season. But this first episode shot by, like I said, it's short, so you can either binge it in a day because there's only 7 episodes, or you can just watch them in bite-sized chunks. I can't wait to see what I end up thinking of episode 2. I'm going to go watch that, and I'll be back immediately to tell you what I think of that. Right, I just got done with episode 2, and I gotta say, I actually really liked this episode. It's actually quite hard to talk about this and not spoil it, because the episodes are so short that there's only a few things that really happen. This one was about essentially the aftermath of the discovery of the powers, and also a grocery trip that she's sent on by her exceedingly cold mother. The mother, I can just tell I'm going to end up absolutely hating her by the end of this, because once again in this episode she's just horrible to the main character, Sid. Just sends her out to get groceries, doesn't care how she gets there, how she gets it back, and she doesn't really give her enough money. She's trying to figure out how she's going to get it back, and that's sort of basically the storyline of the episode. She gets ditched by her current best friend and the love interest from a couple of doors down that I mentioned earlier on. He's just helping her out in this episode, and they're slowly getting to be better friends. There's a couple of different things that happen with the powers. I love that it's just that classic, when I'm emotionally overwhelmed, that's when the powers just burst out, because it's just, I love that sort of thing. I was a massive fan of Heroes when that was out, and I think it's really cool to have something like that again. Definitely thought that I enjoyed the character of Sid more this episode, especially with the newfound best friend that she's got with Stan, which is the boy from down the road. There's just a couple of really cool moments in this. Stan puts his foot in his mouth at one point where he's bitching about his dad, and he says about him travelling, and he's like, I just wish he'd stay gone, and then he instantly realises, like, oh shit, her dad's dead, shouldn't have said that, and then apologises, which, you know, in a way probably makes it even worse, because it's like, oh yeah, you thought about that afterwards. And then there's a bit of a power thing during the actual grocery trip. I'll not spoil that one so that you can see what happens. And then a nice, heartwarming joint smoking experience between the two of them as they sort of go back to his house, and it just reveals that he's just he's a bit of a stereotype, really. He's a pot-smoking, record-listening, reel-to-reel projector-watching guy, and he's just got this bedroom set up. But they both get baked, and they have a little conversation about whether they'd prefer to be eagles or jellyfish, and other different things like that. And it leads to a great power reveal fake out too, where you think that she's going to tell him and she doesn't, and it all came across really well. And I'm really looking forward to going and watch episode 3 now, so I'll be back with that in a minute. You know, for a show that has such short episodes, there's quite a lot to unpack about this next one. So I've just got done with episode 3, and I really enjoyed it. I'm starting to get into this properly now. I'm really enjoying the main character and the way the actor's playing her and the delivery of all the stuff. I really like that we get to see what she really thinks through the diary entries, and the difference between what she thinks and what she says. There's a couple of great power things in this. Her telekinesis is getting a lot stronger now, and it actually leads to quite a cool bit at the end of the episode. Again, I won't spoil what happens with the power, because I think the moment is just so shocking that it's like, okay, wow, that was not what I expected to happen. There's some awkwardness in this. There's comedy, but also gut-punchingly awkward moments. There's a funnier one closer to the beginning of the episode where she's walking her brother home, and he overheard a conversation she was having with her best friend Dina earlier on, right at the beginning of the episode, about having sex with Stan, which happened at the end of episode 2, and he overhears and he asks her about something she said, and that's a funny little exchange. She threatens a bully in the park who's going after her brother, and that's a really funny scene. It's undercut by this western spaghetti music that just sounds like she's going to have a showdown with him, and we get a really cool fake out where you think she's going to use her powers on him, and she's actually trying to use her powers. It doesn't work, and she ends up having to use her words, and it's quite a fun moment. And then the sort of main storyline is that there's a party going on that she has to go to, and she's going with her friend Dina, and they've been sort of drifting apart recently because Dina's with new jock boyfriend Brad, who's in this episode a bit and is a dick. but it's a lot of fun and awkward. And they go to the party and Stan's there, but she doesn't really talk to him because she's just not into him. She actually found the sex really awkward, and he's just not getting that she's not into him. He's really hopeful, and I feel really sorry for him. And then the true awkwardness comes because she's starting to develop feelings or realise that she has feelings for the best friend. And I actually thought that for Dina, not for Stan. And I actually thought that this was quite a cool reveal. I didn't know where they were going to go with it. It had either they were just going to be really close friends, or it sort of seemed like she was going to have some sort of romantic interest in her. And I think the fact that it ended up being a romantic interest was played well. It didn't seem like it was just like, oh, let's just have them be lesbians for sex appeal kind of thing. It actually seemed natural, and the awkward moment where she ends up trying to kiss her mate and her mate just recoils and she's rejected, and it's just the most gut-punchingly awkward moment, and it actually made me just go, oh, that was horrible. But it's such a cool moment to watch, even if it is awkward. It's actually a really endearing moment that I think has definitely helped me relate and like to Sydney a lot more. And then that moment at the end, which again I won't spoil, is really, really awesome. So I can't wait for episode 4 now. Moving on to episode 4, I've just got done with that, and this one was even better. It really is getting better every episode. This one was a lot more dramatic. There's a lot more drama in it, and there's a couple of things getting introduced in that I really liked, but it sort of goes back a little bit in time and shows Stan getting ready for the party that was in last episode, where he builds up to asking Sydney out to the homecoming dance, and get a goofy sequence of him getting ready, which is pretty funny, and then it shows you that he's got somewhat of a dickhead father, and that plays into things later in the episode because he's clearly suffered a bit of a beating at the hands of his dad. Nothing really gets said about that though. There's a little bit of an acknowledgement, but him and Sid don't really talk about it. There's a really sad and tense confrontation between Sydney and her mum, which is really well acted, to be honest, and it was quite realistic and was, like I said, really sad. They talk about what's fair and what's not, and Sydney's mum basically accuses her of having a rose-tinted view of her father, and says that she always chose the father when she was alive, and she still is now. And then the sort of crux of the episode is that at the end of last episode, with what happened with the powers, Stan actually saw that, and now he knows about it. So throughout the episode, he's trying to figure out why and how the powers work and why she has them, and that's pretty cool. We get a little mentor-student scene where he's trying to figure it all out, and it's got a nice little punchline. It builds up to being a montage, and there's a nice little punchline to that. And then there's a really heartbreaking moment where they talk about the fact that Sydney kissed someone else. Obviously we know it's Dina, but Stan doesn't, and it really makes you feel sorry for him, but at the same time he immediately moves on and shows there's no hard feelings, and that's pretty cool too. And then he also says some pretty messed up stuff to try and get Sydney's powers to work, to try and build up the anger, and Sydney's not happy about that, so we'll see where they go with the next episode of that from there. But I really, really enjoyed this episode. Thought the drama was a lot higher. Episode 5's another good one. I think it's probably the least eventful, but it's also got some good character development, and it centres around a comedic plot that I quite liked. Dina gets busted for letting Brad cheat on her test, and she ends up failing the course. Sid's not happy about it, so she has an outburst at the teacher, and it's detention for all three of them. Stan wants to be in detention with them, and he just stands up and goes, "Motherfucker," and the teacher puts him in detention as well. So all four of them are off to detention. They've got to scrub the bleachers, get all the gum off it, and the guy is a super strict guy. He comes in, he's just basically shouting at them to do the orders, and then he leaves them to it. And They end up in there with a bully that sort of makes them play marry, fuck, kill, and there's just like this horrible line where she says that no one in their right mind would ever fuck Sid, and it really pisses her off. But obviously she's got to keep her emotions in check, because if she has an outburst she could use her power, so she stalks off, just goes stomping through the hallways of the school, and she has a little bit of a meltdown in the library that we don't actually see, but it shows us, and it's wrecked, and it's really cool because there's just some like creepy effects going on. There's just something following Sid, and it's all starting to get a little bit creepy. But they realise that the meltdown is on a security camera, so Sid and Stan decide they're going to steal the security footage, and they get Dina to help them by saying that they had sex in the library. And Dina helps them, even though I don't think she actually fully buys it, but they lay out the plan of how they're going to steal the footage and the keys to the principal's office, and it all plays out as they're planning it, and it actually has a really good punchline. They have to seduce Dina has to seduce the janitor to get the keys from him, and that has a really good punchline. It all works out really well, and then we get this shock reveal towards the end that Brad has been even more of a dick than we immediately thought, and that is putting them to odds now, Sydney and Brad. And then there's another reveal at the end of the episode when Stan finally makes Sydney explain what happened in the library, and that is really, really cool. It's so fun to see how the powers are affecting her. I love that it's just sort of an emotional thing. It's just this build up of anger and frustration, and I just love the way that it's played. And she has these outbursts where she just screams or something, and it just sends out these shock waves, and man, I just really, really have been enjoying this. So I'm going to move on to episode 6 now. You can tell we're getting towards the end of the season now. Season 6 really ramps up the drama and the mystery both at the same time. Sydney's just struggling at this point of the season. She's looking through the library footage with Stan to try and work out what happened and try and spot the person that's following her, but they can't see anyone, and she's just afraid that she's going crazy at this point. Brad is threatening her. He's being a complete dick, and he's just being all threatening and horrible and intimidating. Dina wants to know what's going on with Sydney, but she won't tell, and it's causing a little bit of a rift between them. She ends up talking to the counsellor, the school counsellor, and actually does mention, in a surprising turn, mentions that she's been seeing a man that disappears, and the counsellor actually doesn't jump to thinking she's crazy. She talks about grief and seeing her grandmother after she died, and she asks if it looked anything like her dad and suggests that she might need some closure. She has a bit of a fight with her brother, which was actually really good. The actor that plays her brother is really, really good for just a small kid, but he plays this charming sort of inquisitive kid that just is really, really relatable, and I like him. She fights with him and then goes in search of closure on her dad's death, and we actually get the first proper time that she actively uses her powers, and it's a really cool moment. Because they've played with the expectations throughout the season, I wasn't even sure whether it was going to work when she started using her power, but obviously we're coming towards the end of the season, so now she's getting a bit more of a grip on it, and we get some truths about her dad, and she ends up having a heart-to-heart with her mum, who tells her some stuff about her dad that she probably didn't want to hear, that indicate that he might have been through some similar stuff to what she's going through. And it's a dark story that I didn't see coming, and it instantly makes you feel even more sorry for Sydney. And then at the end, just to ultimately pile it on, she goes to write it all down in the diary, and it's gone. And I was just I felt so bad for her. I was sitting there going, oh no, that's terrible, because you don't want someone finding that. A diary is one of those things that's just supposed to be ultimately personal. It's the stuff that you write your thoughts down in that you wouldn't really tell anyone else, and to have someone find it, not only when you're just going through general life problems and all the stuff that she's going through with losing her dad, but on top of it to be writing about her superpowers. And it sort of shows you at the end the man that's been following her, or the shadowy figure, because it doesn't really show you, and just watching her, and leaves it on that creepy note. I can't wait for the season finale now. When I first started this, I really wasn't sure what I was going to think. After that first episode, I just really wasn't sure. The premise seemed quite interesting, but I thought that it might lose a bit of steam as the season went on, and I was sort of expecting to maybe get a little bit bored, but I was wrong, man. After that season finale, I can't wait for season 2. I'm really hoping that it happens. I just thought that they've executed this finale really well. Everything built up to this episode. There was a couple of through lines and everything sort of paid off, and it was really cool. She's reeling from the revelations that she found out about her dad, but rather than let it get down, she tries to find a place of positivity, and I think she's a bit in denial, but at the same time you can't fault her for trying to find a little bit of positivity and trying to move on from it. She makes up with her brother, she makes up with Dina, and they agree to go to the homecoming dance together, and that's sort of where the plot of this episode lies. There's some really nice stuff at the homecoming dance. There's a really heartbreaking moment between Sid and Stan where Sid finally draws a line under the feelings that she has for him, and they agree to just be friends. And like I say, it's just really heartbreaking for both of them, because you can tell that Sydney doesn't want to hurt Stan, but she's just got all these confusing feelings about life and her powers and Dina, and she's just got too much going on to have feelings for him, and in the end I just don't think he's the right one for her, and she still really likes him as a friend, and she just doesn't want to hurt him, and you can tell from the way that she plays it. And you also feel really sorry for Stan, because he's just utterly downcast about it, but at the same time he comes across as such a nice guy, because he's just immediately like, okay, let's just move on, and starts joking around with her. So props to Stan there. Definitely a funny little best friend character that I can get behind. And then we get a really nice moment dance. They bring up the subject of the kiss and what it might have meant, and there seems like there might be a bit of a connection, and I was really happy because it comes across as such a natural sort of cute moment between the two of them. I was really happy because I thought something good was finally going to start happening for Sid, but of course that bubble is burst real quick, because of course, as we all knew he would, Brad has the diary and he starts reading it out loud over a microphone, and this leads to a climactic moment in the episode that I was really shocked by and audibly reacted. Just I couldn't believe what actually happened, and it just sort of came out of nowhere. And then it leaves off with this really dramatic line of, "They should be sorry, let's begin." And I don't know what that means, but I can't wait to find out. The shadowy man sort of gets revealed, and he's who speaks the line, but it doesn't show whether it's a dad or not. Don't know whether it's supposed to be. I don't know what it's going to be, but it has really built up to something that I wasn't expecting. I thought that this might end up being a sort of superhero-y thing, and whilst it does have some sort of elements of that, I don't think she's going to be going and fighting crime. I think she's just solving a personal mystery. I also thought that it might just lean really, really hard into the high school stuff, and it does, but it actually has some cool stuff to say and some nice moments and some really natural, real moments. I highly recommend this season. I really enjoyed this last 2 days of just binging my way through it, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as me if you get and watch it. If you are blind like me, the audio description's really minimal, but at the same time I don't feel like I missed anything. And to be honest, as much as it's awesome sometimes when you watch certain shows where you can really tell that they've worked hard on the audio description, I always quote the Netflix Marvel seasons as those, because they're always so scripted, but to a good point. But this is basically just stage directions, and then the rest is just the character stuff. But yeah, I highly recommend it. You've got to go and give this a watch. Well, I really didn't know how this was going to go. I was quite nervous about doing it. I haven't done a TV series show review, but I actually really enjoyed this, so I think there's probably more of these to come. Obviously, I'm pretty much going to stick to watching stuff that has audio description, because I just enjoy that stuff more. I never really appreciated it before I lost my eyes properly, but these days I find it so integral to the feel of the show, and I really appreciate it. So it will mostly be stuff that I can find on Netflix with audio description, but I'll definitely be trying to get a couple more. Actually, I've just seen before I came in here that Fighting With My Family is now on there with audio description, so it's probably going to be a review coming coming soon, because I'm going to watch it, and if I watch it, I'm probably going to review it. So I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, leave us a like. I know that everyone's liked it then, and if you don't want to miss any more of these reviews, then make sure you hit the subscribe button, then you'll never miss a Mason in the Dark episode again. Thanks for sticking around, hope you enjoyed it. I'm off, and you should have a good one.